Hey guys. So I said in my last video that I would do a quick video about about unmedicated birth and some tips that I have about unmedicated birth, just in my role as a doula and having done it before. So this isn't about why you should. I would never push that on someone. It's everyone's own choice how they want to birth. So this is just if you have decided to have an unmedicated birth, this is my suggestions on some ways to cope throughout it. So the first thing, real quick, there's 3 main stages of labor, of actual labor, not of birth. There's 3 stages of birth too, but this is just the labor part. So the first stage is early labor, and it's kind of when the contractions are like 20 seconds long, and 20 seconds to 40 seconds long, and they last, like, they're about 8 minutes apart, 5 minutes apart, 20 minutes apart, 15 minutes apart. Like, it's before labor becomes what's called active. At this point, contractions can vary. They can be some of them are longer than others, some of them are further apart from others, and it's just sort of, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not set in stone how it's going to go, and every woman's different. Some women don't experience early labor, like me. I went right into active. Some women have really long early labors, and that can get really frustrating, and can last like 3 days. So my first tip about early labor is to not get worked up if it starts. Okay? Don't, come on, Pen. Come on, kitty. Don't time the contractions. Don't get really worked up. Don't start freaking out about the fact that you're going to be at the hospital in 5 hours, because quite frankly, you may not go to the hospital for another couple days. This is a good time to relax, nap, eat, sleep as much as you can, because it's a marathon. I always tell people, make soup. If you are bored and don't know what to do, or you're getting really antsy, and I say soup because you go shopping, you get all the ingredients, you boil it all, you chop everything up, and it's just a good time waster and a good way to take your mind off the fact that you're in early labor. Then active labor starts, and active labor is when the contractions are about 4 or 5 minutes apart, and they last about a minute, and sorry, he's rubbing his gums all over my toes. Anyway, so yeah. At this point, contractions are a little bit painful, or they can just be a little more intense. Women aren't quite as excited anymore, because now it's set in that, it's happening. Some women can get really nervous at this point, or really overwhelmed. That's totally normal. Most women just need to start focusing on what's happening. They can't walk or talk or be distracted through their contractions anymore. This is usually when people need to put in a rhythm to their contractions. So they have a ritual that they do, maybe they suck on ice during a contraction, maybe they I don't know, maybe they rock during the contraction, maybe they sing a song. There's all kinds of things that they can do, and they're all fabulous, but the whole point of it is, if you do them once and it works to help you get through contraction, then it'll help you a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. The third stage of labor is the hardest, and it's called transition. Contractions come very, very fast. They're usually about 2 minutes apart-ish, lasting about a minute and a half-ish. And that changes. Sometimes they'll be a minute and a half apart and lasting 2 minutes, which means that you're never actually out of a contraction, because it works kind of like a wave. So you have your uterus, and then the muscles cramp down, so it kind of cramps and then cramps and cramps and cramps all down the uterus. And so when you're at the peak, the cramp is down kind of midway, and it just sort of pulls up that cervix and helps stretch it over baby's head. If you're one of those women that has minute and a half apart contractions lasting 2 minutes in transition, it means that when you're at the peak, another contraction is starting at the top. So it can be quite intense and very painful, but the best thing about transition is it lasts, on average, if there's not something off, it'll only last anywhere from like half an hour to 2 hours. I've actually seen women take about 13 minutes to go from 7 centimeters, which is generally where transition starts, 7 or 8 centimeters. I've seen them go in like 13 minutes till like having a baby. So it can be really intense. I don't know if I said this, I may have, but the best part about transition is because it's so fast, the contractions actually don't get any worse. So they hit that intensity and they stay there. They don't get harder. So if you can handle like a couple of them, and then you're like, okay, I know what this is, you can foreseeably deal with the next one because you've already dealt with one. The hardest part about transition is really that a woman is completely lost during this part. Like she's just kind of spaced out, and the only thing she can think about is this pain and this contraction and this intensity, and here comes another one. Like there's no next part. So that can be really difficult. I will say that the majority of time, if women are going to ask me for drugs or say they want drugs, it's during transition. Okay? So the next part that I wanted to talk about is what labor feels like. Okay? Oh, and sorry, after transition and you start pushing, the contractions change. They go back to like active labor, so they're spaced out again, like about 3 or 4 minutes apart, and they're not quite as intense, and so it's more manageable. Plus, you get to do something in pushing, so it's not as bad as transition. Transition sucks. So, what labor feels like? The best thing I can compare it to, not trying to be dramatic, but it feels like you're being twisted in two at the stomach. And I know that sounds terrible. Sounds like something no one would ever want to do, right? But it's not constant. And it's not like it is on TV. So when you're in labor and you're having this contraction, it stops. So you have it for about a minute, and then it goes away. And you feel normal again. You might be tired, but you're not in pain anymore. So it's not unmanageable because of that. Yes, it gets harder, but because it gets progressively harder or progressively more painful, it's like the frog in the boiling pot. I don't know if anyone's heard that analogy. The whole theory, and I don't know if anyone's done this, I've certainly never done it, but there's a frog, and if you put a frog into a pot of boiling water, like the frog's going to jump out, but if you put the frog in the pot of water that is room temperature, because frogs are stupid, they will sit in the pot of water and like you slowly turn it up and the frog will cook to death. Just because they don't notice the heat change. I don't know. But so labor's almost kind of like that, except you don't boil to death. You get a baby instead, because it's incrementally worse rather than like, oh, it's easy labor and then oh my god, labor. It's like it goes up slowly. So yeah, that's kind of what labor feels like. I will say that there were points in my labor with my daughter where I had no idea who was in the room. Quite frankly, I didn't care. Like, I didn't care if 38 people walked in. I wouldn't have cared if a circus went through. Like, I was just focused on what was happening, and yeah, so that focus is really important. And don't be surprised if you're kind of going, sorry, like, who are you, to random medical personnel who may come in. So how to get through the hard bits, because there are always hard bits. One thing that I generally put in place with my clients as a doula is a code word. The code word is great because it means that you can ask for drugs as much as you want, and unless the mom uses that code word, she doesn't get them. Because sometimes it's just nice to say, this is hard, and this hurts, and I want drugs. But unless you say asparagus, or sweet potato, or teddy bear, or something like that, it's not, you don't get them. Don't use drugs, or baby, as a code word. Those don't work. After a contraction, you can also ask, like if she's in a contraction and asks for pain medication, you can ask after a contraction if she still wants it. The last thing that I will say is really important is get checked. If you decide you do want pain medication, get checked to see where you're at. I cannot tell you how many times I have had mums say, this hurts and I want an epidural, and they get checked and they're like fully dilated. Or really close, like 9.5 centimeters. And sometimes medical personnel just don't, they assume that women haven't progressed rather than assuming they've progressed for some odd reason, and so they don't check them. And I've heard horror stories, thankfully none of my clients, who have been fully dilated and get an epidural and end up needing all kinds of intervention because now they can't push. Make sure you tell your nurse and your doctor or midwife what your intentions are. So tell them if you have a code word in place. Tell them if you're intending to be asked after a contraction. Tell them that you want to get checked before you get any medication. And remember that you don't need to jump to the furthest bit of medication. You can start with gas. Laughing gas is fabulous, and I know lots of women, myself included, who got through labor on laughing gas. You don't need to go right to an epidural. You can start with the laughing gas and move to fentanyl, and there's tons of things you can do before you jump to medication, or before you jump to the big medication, right? Tips for dads: never, ever, 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 ever say to your wife, you know what, this is too hard and you can't do this and I think you need an epidural, or I think you need X. That woman might be handling it perfectly fine. She just needs to vocalize a little. The person who's not handling it perfectly fine at that point is you. So if you're feeling the need to say that, please calm down. Go get a breather, have some coffee. Another thing is, if you have a doula, make a pact with your doula that if she sees you starting to freak out, because it's the doula's job to take care of daddy too, and if I see my clients start to freak out a little, we have a rule that if I ask them if they need a cup of coffee, it means they need a cup of coffee, and they should go get some, or tea, or whatever. Like, they need to step out of the room for a few minutes and have a breather. So those are kind of my tips. Of course, I'm very pro doula, and I think that they're fabulous to have in labor. I intend to have one, but I really want to stress that you can do it if it's something you choose to do, and that you don't need to feel bad if you change your mind in labor. You've tried, and it's not a failure, because you're still going to get your happy, beautiful baby at the end. So anyway, that's kind of my suggestion. Always go in with a plan. Don't go in with like, well, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, because then I can tell you it probably won't. So anyway, I had to talk really fast through that, and my time is coming to an end because I only do 15 minutes. But thank you for watching, and check in on Monday, and I will do my 32-week video. Okay, so yeah. Bye, guys. Have a good day.